Hello friends, Athena here, and I just wanted to make a quick intro to this video. Today I'll be showing you my blush and highlighter collection. Blush and highlight is one of my favorite steps in my routine. I think it brings a lot of life to the face and really ties the look together for me. Quick disclaimer, I know my collection might seem quite large to some people, but I buy 99% of my products myself and they bring me a lot of joy. So I thought we'd start off with cream blushes. These are the Lime Crime Software blushes, and I have the shades Dark Web, Hotspot, Hyperlink, and Flower AI. I'd say my most used shades are Hyperlink and Flower AI. I don't get as much use out of Dark Web and Hotspot. These are a little bit too dark for me, so in the pan you can see they're a little bit shiny because I tend to mix them with highlighter to make them a little bit more wearable. This formula, being a cream to powder, leans much more towards the powder side. It makes them a little bit harder to blend since these are very pigmented. Although they are harder to blend, the fact that they're cream to powder does make them last a lot longer on the face, and they come in this really beautiful plastic component. Here I have the Natasha Denona Bloom Blush and Glow palette. As you can see, it has been very well loved. This is actually one of my most used cream blush and highlight palettes. Now these I wouldn't say completely dry down, therefore I do like to sort of set the blush using the powder highlights that come in the palette. Here are some swatches of the powder products in the palette. This is an absolutely phenomenal blush and highlight formula. I would really recommend it to anyone. The creams are super easy to blend out and the highlighters are very high impact. However, I don't recommend these for textured skin because even though I don't have that much texture on my skin, I do find that they emphasize it. Here I have a sample of the Nude Sticks Nudies All Over Face Dewy Color. I have the shade Sweet Peach Peony. This one is a little bit light for me and has to be built up quite a lot. This product stays dewy on the skin and it doesn't really last that well on my oily skin because it never really sets down, so I would recommend this more for dry skin. Here I have the Milk Makeup Lip and Cheek in the shade Work. I find this to be much more pigmented than the Nudies Nude Sticks. It's also really easy to blend out and I do find that this lasts all day even though it doesn't necessarily set down. Here I have a Galactic Skin Glow. Mine is in the shade Moonlight. This is a really lovely and blendable cream highlighter formula. I tend to use this by mixing it with more difficult to work with cream blushes. Here you can see some swatches. It is very metallic, but it blends out really nicely and I really like it. Here I have the Subtle Beauty Lip and Cheeks. I have the shades Dusty Rose, Riveting Red, and Plum. I prefer Dusty Rose and Plum. They are much creamier and easier to blend. Riveting Red is a little bit stiff and I imagine it's because this formula has much more carmine in it. I believe Dusty Rose is vegan and these two are not vegan because they contain carmine. With these I tend to use Dusty Rose to make Riveting Red a lot easier to blend out, and sometimes I combine Dusty Rose with Plum as well just to make it better suited to my skin tone. Here we have some swatches. This one is Dusty Rose, this one is Riveting Red, and this one is Plum. These do last all day on me, but I do set them with translucent powder. Let's move on to powder products, and I'm going to start out with Ofra. I have the Ofra and Francesca Tolot collaboration palette, which contains two shimmery blushes in the shade Versus and Venezia. I also have the Island Time palette, which has this beautiful sort of vapor wave print on it. And this includes the shades Mai Tai, Punch, Bellini, and Cosmopolitan, as well as the shade Bali Highlight. Lastly, I have the Ofra and Samantha March Chiclet Blush Duo. The Ofra blush formula has really quickly become one of my absolute favorite blush formulas. Even with the brighter shades, it's really hard to overdo them. It's a microfine powder formula, so they're super easy to pick up on a brush. These shimmery ones are absolutely beautiful on the skin. They don't emphasize texture at all, but it's a really beautiful blush highlight formula. And this Samantha March Duo has quickly become one of my favorite everyday blushes. It's really pretty and neutral. It goes with any style of makeup, and it's a really great product. I guess we'll continue on with blush palettes. This is the Kat Von D Fetish palette. It came out in a holiday collection, and this is actual thread that is embroidered on here, which is a really interesting and pretty touch that I had never seen on a palette. The blush formula in here is okay. It's pigmented, it's a really fine powder formula, but what's actually very magical in here is the highlights. These are absolutely spectacularly glittery and beautiful on the face. Here you can see some swatches of the highlighter formula. These are my only two Anastasia Beverly Hills Glow kits. I use the Moonchild one absolutely all the time. My favorite shade in it is Pink Heart because I love a pink reflect. I also use Blue Ice and Lucky Clover quite often. I don't use Star Purple Horseshoe or Blue Moon all that often just because they are darker, and I do prefer the transparent base with the color reflect. Here are some swatches if you're unfamiliar with the formula, but these just offer a really pretty and subtle colorful addition to any look. Here I have the Nicole Guerrero Glow Kit. I don't get very much use out of this one because it's a little bit too neutral for me. Out of face highlights, I enjoy Kitty Cat and Daydream. I use Glow Getter and 143 on my body, and I mix it with lotions and oils. Hence, you can see this ring around it from me pawing at it with my hands. Here I have the Becca, Khloe, and Malika Face Palette. I don't really follow the Kardashians or know what's up with them, but this is a very pretty face palette. I know Becca is pretty much dead as a brand, so you could probably find this on sale. This is my favorite blush in it. It's just really pretty and brightening on the skin and makes you look a lot more lively. This is sort of the neutral one in the palette. It's really pretty for every day. I don't use this gold highlighter that often because I don't really love gold highlighters, but this bronzer is also really lovely on the skin, and while I wouldn't consider it shimmery, I'd consider it a satin, and it just looks really pretty and natural on. Here I have a Too Faced blush and highlight duo in the shade Like My Melons from the Fruity line, I guess. To be completely honest, I don't particularly like either of these formulas. They're both very hard to pick up on a brush, but this side emphasizes texture and it's not really all that metallic for a highlighter, and this side is just hard to pick up. No complaints once you get it on, and it smells nice, I guess. Here I have the MAC Take Me Home Blush Duo from the MAC and Patrick Starr Floral Realness collection. These are very hard pressed. They're hard to pick up on a blush, and I didn't really love the eyeshadows either. This collection sort of made me not interested in MAC. Here I have the Sigma Chroma Glow highlighter palette, and the packaging to this is just beautiful. It looks like a seashell, and I love that. This is the inside. I really love using Lush, Bedazzle, and Ambrosia. They're my favorite shades in the palette. I only use Zeal if I feel like looking like a zombie, which does happen occasionally. It's kind of a deep purple with a blue reflect, and I kind of like it for days when I enjoy looking dead. Felicity is a pretty purple, but I don't use it all that often, and Peaceful is a little bit too subtle for me. Here you can see Lush, Bedazzle, and Ambrosia. Here I have the Saharan Blush Volume 2 palette. I really enjoy these. I find that Juvia's Place has very solid quality products. I really like the shades Lena and Tau. I don't get as much use out of B, but Yara I like sort of using when I do warmer yellow or brown toned looks. Zoa and Sola are kind of what I would call a thicker highlighter formula where you can feel some sort of silicones in it, which I don't mind because it tends to make highlighters very high impact. Here are some swatches of Zoba and Sola. Here we have most flavors of the Bare Minerals line. I have two Bounce and Blur blushes in Coral Cloud and Pink Skies. I have a loose powder blush in the shade Luminary, and I have a highlighter in the shade Joy. Here we have Pink Skies and Coral Clouds of the Bounce and Blur blushes, and this is a very beautiful blush formula. It has a little bit of a shimmer through it, so you don't necessarily have to wear a highlight with these. They bring a lot of life to the face. I have no issues picking these up on a brush. I wouldn't necessarily say the bounce in the name is accurate. These aren't like a putty blush formula at all to me. These seem like regular powder blushes, but they are very pretty ones. This loose blush in the shade Luminary is a bit hard to work with for me. I tend to shake it out into the cap and then sort of stab at it with a brush to break it apart before applying it. Here's a swatch of it. It's kind of a neutral mauve tone. I don't get a huge amount of use out of it just because I do find it sort of difficult to work with the having to crush up the little clumps. Here I have the Bare Minerals highlighter in the shade Joy, and I was actually really impressed with this. Given that Bare Minerals has sort of a more natural vibe, I found this highlighter to be pretty high impact and metallic, which I enjoy in a highlighter. Here you can see a swatch of it. Here you can see my Nars blushes. I have these Baked Gelée blush duos in Panic and Adoration, and then I have the regular powdered blush in the shade Courbattant. I believe they discontinued this Baked Gelée formula, but it is absolutely beautiful. I found it relatively easy to pick up on a dense brush, and that it looked very pretty on the skin. It didn't emphasize texture at all. This one, due to the nature of the shade, is very easy to go overboard with. I wouldn't consider the Nars powder blush formula anything spectacular, and I don't think I'd ever actually pay full price for one of these. Here's a swatch though, so you can see how pretty the color is. Here is the Pure Cosmetics Bronze and Brighten Trio. It is a Baked Gelée blush, highlighter, and bronzer. To be honest, the only shade I get much use out of is this shade Blush and Glow over here. The bronzer is too shimmery for me, and gold highlights just don't do it for me. They're a little bit too neutral. I would, however, say that this formula does emphasize a little bit of texture on the skin, unlike the Nars Baked Gelée formula. Here I have a Ciate London Marbled Light Blush in the shade Dusk. Even though it's supposed to be marbled with highlighter, it's pretty much just satin looking on the skin, and it's really nothing to write home about. I got it in a BoxyCharm. It's a nice neutral blush. Here is a swatch. You can see it's kind of satin and not really the most pigmented. Here is a Marc Jacobs Air Blush in the shade 502 Lines and Last Night. It's a very pretty coral blush that goes into a sort of lighter gold highlight. I would never pay full price for it, but I got it on sale and it is a pretty blush. When I use this, I prefer to pick up more of the blush side than the highlight side because I don't find the highlight side that impressive, but the blush is very pretty. Here I have the Phase Zero Blush Bronzer Trio. I got this in a BoxyCharm, just like the Ciate London blush. I find this to be a very flattering contour shade on me. If you're much darker, I don't think this will be a bronzer on you or a contour on you, so I wouldn't suggest it if you're a few shades darker than me. This is a pretty blush and highlight. However, on their website this retails for like $42 and the compact feels a little bit cheap. I forgot to mention this with the Nars stuff. This is the Nars liquid blush in the shade Dolce Vita. This stuff is very, very pigmented and watery. If you're going to use this, it's absolutely necessary to put it on the back of your hand and sort of tap it out before actually applying it. This is the level of watery we're talking about. A little bit goes a very, very long way. Also, due to how liquidy it is, the spout is just going to become a hot mess eventually, like mine. Here I have a Laura Mercier highlight in the shade Devotion. It's a pretty highlight. The packaging is very clunky. And here's a swatch of the highlighter. Here I have the Moschino and Sephora collaboration highlighter. I pretty much bought this for the compact because it was really cute. The highlighter is pretty. It's not a high impact highlighter. It's more on the natural side. Here are some swatches so you can see just how natural I'm talking. But once again, the packaging was super cute. I actually really enjoyed the eyeshadow palette in this collection and might do a 3 looks 1 palette with it later on this week. Here is a Laura Geller Baked Blush and Brighten blush in the shade Pink Grapefruit. As you can see, I've worn it down pretty significantly, and that's because I actually really enjoy Laura Geller products. You can't tell in swatches, but once you get this on the skin, it actually brings a lot of life to the face, and I find that the shimmer going through it makes it look very pretty and natural. As a brand, I wouldn't say her products and new launches particularly attract me, because as you can see here, it's got the same thing going on as the Laura Mercier highlight, where it's just really clunky and big packaging for no apparent reason. Even though this is a baked domed blush, I don't think it quite needed all this packaging to it. Last but not least, I have this Digital Dust Melt Highlighter in Iluminación that came out with their Amor Eterno collection. And this is a absolutely beautiful pink reflect highlight. It's actually one of my favorites. Here you can see a swatch of it. It's super hard to capture on camera, but besides a light pink reflect, it also has almost a fuchsia one in it. I haven't tried any of the other Melt Digital Dust highlighters, but based on this one, I would recommend them and I'd like to try out more of them. They have a shade called Genesis that I'm very interested in. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more content like this, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe down below.